Let's do the second part of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We have already discussed regarding the uh, Article 1 and the preamble in the previous classes. So let's continue. This is the picture of the United Nations organization. You can see. Then sometimes you can find also uh, YouTube video from YouTube where many experts and many teachers talk about the international covenants, not from me. You can also search in the YouTube. You can find. Then let's see. The Article 2 says that each state party to the present covenant undertakes to respect and to ensure to all individuals within its territory and subject to its jurisdiction the rights recognized in the present covenant without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, should respect the human right of every individual, that there should not be any discrimination against or on the basis of race, color, sex, language, religion, or political or other opinion, national or social origin. I think you can understand very easily that then within this Article 2, Clause 2 says that were not already provided for by existing legislative or other measures, each state party to the present covenant undertakes to take the necessary steps in accordance with its constitutional process and with the provisions of the present covenant to adopt such legislative or other measures as may be necessary to give effect to the rights recognized in the present covenant. It says very simply that state khudingmakna loinamak magi citizenship human rights se protect tawgudabani, respect tawgudabani, karigumba basis amakaktada haide jat manadaba digri kuchu khenaba digri nupani nupini khenaba then language magi loan adigi dharma adigi rajniti gi khenaba hadi dol adu yawi adu yawde habna chingba then opinion khenaba adigi adugi jatini aduga masi adu pokpani adagi imphal da or not say suppose city da rural pokpani adigi lairabani ina khunbani haibana chingba khenaba amata thamdana miyoba khudmakse chap manaba miyeng amada yengadabani haibase sigi international covenant on civil and political rights na mek siang na palli ada sigi mek siang na panbasida if state singduna karigumba hanana khena balermaba sida khena bale heloidabani haibase khena baleram taragadi madugi measures waina madugi phananaba step mayam ama paikhatlakanda mari leinaba clausing legislative orders judiciary orders magi state singda hapsel lakanda miyoiba magi hakse chap chana protect torba thumgadabani haba siko then next time each state party to the present covenant undertakes to ensure that any person whose rights or freedom is herein recognized are violated shall have an effective remedy, notwithstanding that the violation has been committed by person acting in an official capacity. Ensure that any person whose rights or freedoms is herein recognized are violated. International Covenant na piriba magi recognized rights in se karigma violate torba. Adutagadi shall have an effective remedy. Kanana remedy malakadabani kanana lakani state to na particular state to na. That means magi human right to violate tawaya de haba violate tawtaragadi madufananaba steps in lokakadabani haba. Notwithstanding that the violation has been committed by person acting in an official capacity. Hariba masagi violate tawiriba victim wariba misaktu karigum matamna magi official activities mapang tukum tanda kayigum soigiba natraga kano tawgidna violate suppose tawrena khallagasu madugi remedy singdo lakhokadabani hadi miyo visinse protect tawrakan human rights bajana protect tawrakan thamgadabani haba. Ensure that any person claiming such a remedy shall have his right thereto determined by competent judicial, administrative, or legislative authorities. By any other competent authority provided for by the legal system of the state and to develop the possibilities of judicial remedy. To ensure that the competent authorities shall enforce such remedies when granted. You see, to ensure that any person claiming such a remedy shall have this right thereto determined by a competent judicial, administrative, or legislative authorities. Say, if suppose the victim may move to the court to get or to restore his right. Indiagi fundamental right to yaujari adu karigamba magi right chi violate tawita gadi court move tawrkanda magi right to hanjalhanana bako main tawduna ngasai competent authority haidi lower court oigera high court oigera supreme court oigera chalakana magi koigi mangi ba magi right to violate tawbi right to hanjalhangadabani amuk adugi yanana bagi process to sinbi gadabani laigadabani habako. Then Article 3 says that the state parties to the present covenant undertake to ensure the equal right of men and the women to the enjoyment of civil and political rights set forth in the present covenant. That means within this International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights has given equal right to all the men and the women. As such, all the state parties should provide as such equality before the law. Then Article 4 says that in time of public emergency, which threatens the life of the nation and that the existence of which is officially proclaimed, the state parties to the present covenant may take measures derogating from their obligations under the present covenant to the extent strictly required by the exigencies of the situation. What it says that you may heard or may not heard about the emergency. In India also, there is emergency provisions under the Indian Constitution that there are three kinds of the emergency: national emergency, then president rule, and the financial emergency. Within this national emergency, all the fundamental rights will be suspended for some times within that period of the national emergency. Say, if there is a threat from the outside or internal rebellion or any emergency situation arise in the nation, then the president can proclaim the emergency in India. And not only in India, in other parts of the other countries also. At that time, the fundamental rights may be suspended sometime. Within this period of the emergency, at least the state should try to protect the human right of the citizens. But in particular situations, if there is certain restrictions to be imposed in the against the citizen, karigumba akogi national emergency ma loktopa matamda human rights matam khara suspend tawne matam sida tangai phatana akogi loktoktaba yadraba magi human right ki magi piriba hana piriba human right ki freedom singse restrict tawdaba yadaba jaga singdo yam section na yenga kanda state tuna restrict tawbudo information se akogi international covenant on civil and political rights that yon gadabani khangan gadabane ba sikegi rights di suspend matam khara tawri kana habise I say provided that such measures are not inconsistent with their other obligations under international law, and do not involve discrimination solely on the ground of race, color, sex, language, religion, or social origin. Among the high given minor, suppose mana kaigumba matam khara suspend human right fundamental rights suspend tawde Madugi suspend tawba kanda miyo karana suspend tawba miyo karana suspend tawdaba kana haiba ri khetnaba akoigi on the grounds of race, color, sex, language, religion among the high given mana khetnaba amta thamdana yam section na yena kana tawgadabani. Then no derogation from Article 6, 7, 8, 11, 15, 16, and 18 may be made under this provision. Adu masagi matam khara suspend tawagasu tangai badana hojiki international covenant civil and political right the piva article khara lai sigi article sigi suspend tabushunga ya roi haba. Kaigino didi Indian constitution na su national emergency law to pakanda akoigi atopa human right fundamental rights se suspend tawagasu suspend tawdaba fundamental right khara lai madudi kaino da right to life akoini hingbagi hak se. Suppose right to freedom of movement mafam khuding amada chatpa yabagi hak adigi right to freedom of expression si mayam sidi national emergency leba kana suspend tawgani but adubu masagi right to life sidi suspend tawsunga yate mi hingbagi hak sidi mat sunga yate ko aduna sumai tawdana international covenant on civil and political right tisu high article 6 7 8 11 15 16 18 the period sidi suspend tawga yate. Any state party to the present covenant availing itself of the right of derogation shall immediately inform the other states parties to the present covenant. As I have already mentioned in the previous paragraph that, say, suppose if necessary, the state government may take up some measures to suspend the fundamental rights. At the time, the state should inform immediately to the covenant, to the convention, international convention on civil and political rights. Inform tawgadabani haba kanagi khudang tawgani didi through the intermediary of the Secretary General of the United Nations of the provisions from which it has derogated and of the region by which it was actuated. Intermediary hiding asagi pau phaudo phaujin tawnanaba lairiba miyoi ko secretary obi ai kano obi ai magi United Nations gi Secretary General gi khuthangda chatlakanda madugi khuthangda chatlakanda pau si information se hairiba provision haidi hairiba act se tangai phadana chatnadaba yade aduga siguma matamda hairiba sigi fundamental right se suspend tawgani habidi maram chaba kai kai pira kanda kai dawi suspend tawdoino habna chingba maram chaba pira kanda information di yohongadaba ko. A further communication shall be made through the same intermediary on the date on which it terminates such derogation. The high suspend or magi fundamental rights, the hidi kanasindo, sumain tau na sige matam sila lepe, di matam haradi sumain suspend tau ni have nothing. Then Article 5 says that nothing in the present covenant may be interpreted as implying for any state, group of person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and the freedoms recognized herein, or at their limitation to a greater extent than is provided for in the present covenant. Suppose no one, no state, no person, or no group of people cannot modify or cannot use this covenant on personal interest. Tonganba magi personal interest ki oro digidi tonganba state to gi kananaba oro modify tawduna piriba covenant high the provisions in section doctrine tawduna miyabagi hak magi freedom do manghan nanaba digidi karigumba magi apamba state to gi kano si he na kano tawnaba ni na violate tawduna yaroi haba. Then number 2 there shall be no restriction upon or derogation from any of the fundamental human rights recognized or existing in any state party to the present covenant pursuant to law, convention, regulation, or custom on the pretext that the present covenant does not recognize such rights or that it recognizes them to lesser extent. There shall be no restriction upon or derogation from any of the fundamental human rights recognized or existing in the state party to the present covenant pursuant to law, conventions, regulations, or custom on the pretext that the present covenant does not recognize such rights or that it recognizes them to a lesser extent. As fangzariba, hana lejariba, fundamental rights, handa halakpa, digidi, madu tunganba, international covenant on civil and political right and recognized or lejariba, hak chinche, manghan nanaba, handa halangan honor kusa, then part 3, Article 6 says that every human being has the inherent right to life. This right shall be protected by law. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life. I have just mentioned that no one shall have the right to deprive of right to life. Umantana ko hingbagi hakse. Simmat payabagi sarkar oigera ama oigera any authority amantana madulai teba. Haksimangan or like Tibako. At my Taldana, Masagi, in countries on which I have not published, the death penalty sentence of death may be imposed only for most serious crime. Kanagumaleba am tada Shivagi than disipi by Atibako. Kariguma Pita Gasu Yam Tangai Padana, Yam Haksin Mamagi crime, the Gumari and the Kanda the Piba the Ni, Aduga India the Su Shivagi penalty, Seka Piramde, Adubum Yam Toina, Yam Tanga Toise. Kadogino Haida Magi Shivagi Hakche, Piba Yare, Mana Togiba crime, Sukimatic Wang, and Masi Hakamatic Jare Kani, Maram Saba, Natragati Piba Yatiba, Karino, the Mima with the Hatpagi, Haksi Pita Ragade, Maduka Dogeda, genocide, Kogi me, Hatlaga Hatlaga Sumasing and Bagi, Karonga, Kogi Chatkibi possibility labor core, Dugumbi and associated and no country to the provision of the present covenant and to the conventions on the prevention of punishment of the crime of the genocide in Hypercore. This penalty can only be carried out punishment pursuant to the final judgment rendered by a competent authority, competent court. Then when deprivation of the life constitutes a crime, genocide, it is understood that nothing in this article shall be authorized any state party to the present covenant. And Shivagi penalty se piba yabagi mon the pide Pidragasu yam tangai padaba tanja krada adum yabagi hak kanodi piri adum rumdidum thami and not derogate in any way from any obligation assumed under the provision of the conventions on the prevention and the punishment of the crime of genocide. Adubu sida lurakadure anyone sentenced to death shall have the right to seek pardon or commutation of the sentence. Kanagumba Shibagi Pasi Taudore kana haiba Muse Ma Masamang Namuk claim Amuk Akogi Wakatsabayaba Magi Nakpi Nanaba, then Natragana Karatiangel Hanaba Mapunsi Chupa Zelda Legadore Kanaga. Haibaki Karatiangel and Bukana claim to Bayai, do not be Bayabaki, Haksu India the Sudum Lay, Indiagi Akogi Republic Day to Umatamda, Mapunsi Chupa Gender like the Vudi Sahi, Miat Sahi Karakatare, Dutoreka and Haibus in Badum Labanitum Taramanico. At my town, amnesty, pardon, or commutations of the sentence of death may be granted in all cases. Amnesty, the Maran Laitre, Namatado Kroga and Haibako. Then pardon Nakbiba, then commutation and Maran Sindo Handanba, she get the Bagi de Gima, even Han Nabama second authority, right, Tareka, the Nakbi Nabama, Sinamia, Magi Hat Pado on to Okanda, Jeldo and Mapunzi Super Henbagi, Yare kind of 100 Payabagi, do more to provisions in the period. So my town sentence of the death shall not be imposed or crimes committed by person Yarikagi, Jihariba, Sibagi Dandi, the gig and nothing Shakogi, say try and pani Makara Leba Anganga, then pregnant women that people this they have nothing in this article shall be invoked to delay or to prevent the abolition of capital punishment by any state party or the present covenant. As a high best mind of the wigi party state antana high river magi kanose ꯃꯤꯑꯣꯏꯕꯒꯤ ꯍꯛꯁꯦ ꯐꯪꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯗꯤꯂꯦ ꯇꯧꯅꯅꯕ ꯇꯦꯛꯅꯤꯛ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒꯅ ꯃꯥꯁꯦ ꯅꯝꯗꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯄꯅꯤꯁꯃꯦꯟꯁꯦ ꯀꯦꯄꯤꯇꯦꯜ ꯄꯅꯤꯁꯃꯦꯟꯁꯦ ꯄꯤꯅꯅꯕ ꯗꯤꯂꯦ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯗꯤꯂꯦꯌꯤꯡ ꯇꯦꯛꯇꯤꯛꯁꯀ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕ ꯈꯣꯠꯄ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕꯁꯤꯡꯁꯨ ꯑꯝꯇ ꯌꯥꯔꯣꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯇꯔꯅꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯀꯣꯑꯣꯄꯔꯦꯁꯟ ꯁꯤꯚꯤꯜ ꯑꯦꯟ ꯀꯣꯟꯐꯔꯦꯟꯁꯤꯅ ꯄꯤꯔꯤꯕꯀꯣ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤꯗꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗ ꯂꯣꯏꯁꯤꯜꯂꯁꯤ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯂꯣꯏꯒꯗꯧꯔꯦ